Unmasked. Extended, in-depth conversation with the greatest minds in comedy. Unmasked with Ron Bennington.
They're all excited. And I know this is tough for you. I know.
No, they're pretending they're excited. They've been forced to come here. It's a government thing, and I understand that. But
I don't know how you are working in front of a live audience, so I hope this is okay for you.
I don't. Well, it's weird. I don't normally see the audience's faces, and I can actually see people. But when I was a street performer, I could see everyone's face. So I've gone from seeing everyone's face and then to smaller clubs where you could see half of people's faces into Madison Square Garden where you can't see anyone's face.
So is that difficult when you're doing stand-up and you're just looking kind of like at a black wall?
No, I love the black wall.
Yeah.
Because, and actually I could do either because I can get, I'm now looking at people, but the thing I found that on the street performing was that or in stand-up gigs, you'd find someone down the front who's going like, whose head is just lolling off, or they're looking around and shaking their head and they just think they hate your stuff. And I would obsess about that one person.
Sure.
I think everyone does.
Yeah.
So everyone else is killing themselves. Or there's one person down the front, like the Comedy Store in London, who at 3 in the morning shows, they'd be drunk and just shouting.
You can say whatever you want.
You can say whatever. So they're saying, "Fuck off, you."
I'm not that.
Fuck off, you cunt.
Yeah, that's fine.
They were saying stuff like that, and I thought, okay. And they were drunk, so you couldn't say, "Well, I will not actually fuck off at this moment," because I am Captain Cunt, sir. And you have to, whatever they say, you have to actually take it in and repeat it back to them and build it more, so it takes away the power of it.
Right.
Like Lenny Bruce talked about taking away the power of the word, the F word, the C word, the N word, the L word. What other words were the P word? Because, you know, when you put the same word, anyway, whatever. So, but I just found repeating it back to them, that's what I do. And then they just keep going because they were drunk and they had no shame. Because even if you put them down, the whole audience just laughs against that person. They didn't notice it because they're drunk out of their head, so they just keep going. So that was annoying. Yeah,
at a certain point, you have to let them annoy the audience before you can even take
I found the articulation, this is very handy for stand-ups, is that when you're starting off, if someone does heckle you, if you're going well, if you're going badly, the first heckler is actually
Thank God.
Well, if you're going badly, the first heckler is with the audience all hate you. They're beginning to hate you, and that person is turning against you, and you can't appeal to the rest of the audience. But on a good show, if you're going well and one person comes against it, it is a challenge, like a duel with swords, like Aaron Burr and Mr. Hamilton way back when, and it is one of those duels, and the audience wants you to kill them.
Right.
They want you to actually kill them. So, and as long as you know that you can appeal to the gang of the audience. And I used to say, look, you just keep doing this. Everyone here's paid a lot of money. And you're just interrupting the flow, so they're going to knife you in the interval. So I just bear that in mind, that everyone here hates you so much now. and then people in the audience go, oh yeah, I probably do. If I had a knife, that's what I'd do. It's always very aggressive, of course, the language.
Well, you're talking about some of your early days, and you go through this in the documentary, Believe, where you did street, you did stand-up, you did sketch. And I thought, which was kind of brave, and most comics try to stay away from, is showing yourself before you kind of were polished or found that persona.
Well, I think that's important. I just, it's the early stuff of the failing which makes the arriving better and the lasting longer. Some people arrive, hey, I'm 14 and it's all going well, or I'm 17, and you're in your 20s or 30s going, that 17-year-old's doing great immediately, and that seems so annoying because you spent years, can be decades, pushing away. But the stamina, it's your length of stamina which is important. So I had a 10-year wilderness years. Churchill had his wilderness years. I had them straight off, as a lot of people do. And Van Gogh had his entire life as the wilderness years, which is...
even now he doesn't think he's doing well. He doesn't know.
He doesn't know that everyone says that kind of brushwork, man. Because he was saying this brushwork will work at some point. I think he sold 0 paintings, didn't he?
Yeah, well, I think they said 1. But I don't know that's ever happened to a comedian where, like, 40 years later, everyone goes, oh, he was funny.
No, I don't think it is. I think comedy's quite immediate, isn't it? So it's only art, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And art is kind of better. It's almost like you should fake your own death.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, his stuff is really good. No, I wasn't dead. Oh, we've already spent 20 million. Oh, well, I wonder if their price would drop if they suddenly came back live.
There is no way if they would just say Basquiat is alive that everyone would go, these paintings are still worth the same thing. Mainly because they keep painting, where paintings is like, that's it, you're not going to get any more. But, you know, of course, with Eddie Murphy, he's just going to keep making movies forever.
Yes.
You know, he's not going to stop. Going over your...
I got to mention something about you call him Van Gogh.
I call him Van Gogh.
In Britain, we call him Van Gogh. And I was playing Amsterdam, because and I do encourage anyone to play as stand-ups, play around the world. And Amsterdam, you can do it in full English. But I said, how do you pronounce the name of your painter? Is it Van Gogh or Van Gogh? And they say it's Van Gogh. So none of us are right. So it's Van Gogh. So it's like that.
Of course, they don't necessarily even call their country Amsterdam. So
well, Holland, you mean?
Yeah. I mean, at certain points where, like, we will say, you know, oh, I'm in Spain.
Yeah.
Nobody who lives there calls it Spain.
Well, because the Castilian and the other one.
But you brought.
Well, they're too close on it. One's Castilian, one's Catalan. That's it. And then there's the Basque region. They don't get on. Nightmare of politics.
Yeah. There's a bright young man sitting there. I'm ready at all times. But you said I encourage other comics to go out and work the world, and I don't know of anyone else who really does it the way you do.
I might be a hand to seek. It's a desperation for love. I mean, this documentary, which Believe, which has just got Emmy nominated, and I'm plugging it.
Congratulations.
Thank you, but it's not. I didn't get the nomination, though. My life got the nomination, but the producers made it. I just stood there and lived the life, and I'm not that interesting. And I think a lot of performers are desperate to be interesting, because the interesting people who become performers are it's a Sid Vicious. You go out there and shoot up, I'm going to kill someone, I'm going to this, going to that, and oh, how interesting, let's just film that.
Right.
You don't even, just keep killing people and whatever you're doing, and shooting drugs into your eyeball.
It is one of the least interesting things that he did was get on stage. That was the one part of his life where anybody could have done that.
Yeah, I think even that, you know, because he was up there sneering. But did he make good music? I don't think so. But did he have a punk attitude? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, but I am actually quite boring. There's a number of creative people, who just actually like to go into the hotel room, not trash it, live in it, and try and do some decent work. And that's the mold I'm in. So they happen to the producers, Sarah Townsend, and they made it into My Life Looks Interesting.
Well, I think that the interesting thing is that the fact that you were so driven throughout your life to make it, but there was no results showing that it was going to come this way. I mean, most of the time you could say to people, this isn't for you at this point, you know, because you worked through it might make somebody with a lot less talent think, I'm going to keep going when they shouldn't.
And this is the difficult thing, because in my early days, I felt at 7, literally at 7, I was going, okay, give me the roles at school,
right?
And they weren't giving them to me, and I felt that surely they could see I was good, and I now look back at it and I think either I was rubbish or they thought I was rubbish, and I don't know how to tell without documentary evidence of those, you know, video footage of my auditions or whatever. I do know that I'm quite good with a run-up. You know, if I do a thing over and over again and practice, a lot of rehearsal, a lot of, like, all my stand-up is endlessly remodeled and remodeled and remodeled. And then I get good after, like a fine wine. I am the fine wine as opposed to the instant, I don't know what the instant analogy is, but yeah, over a period of time I get good at things. Right. And there could be a lot of people who, I mean, if you look at Dustin Hoffman, didn't he have a real tough beginning? Yeah. And then he really worked on it. The Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours scenario. The Beatles, were they really good at the beginning, or they have a lot of potential? Then they had Hamburg, and Hamburg made them into this amazing thing. And then they were looking too rough, and then Epstein put them in suits that made them more approachable. And then you've got Paul McCartney, he's probably more melodic. John Lennon's more attitude. And I've probably always been into Paul McCartney's music slightly more than John's. And Imagine, I suppose, is very much the one that, well, they both did cross over in attitude and melody, but together it was sort of unbeatable, and it hasn't been beaten since.
But the thing about that you know, I can understand you play guitar for 10,000 hours and you're going to get much better at it, but I don't know if that makes you a better songwriter. The same with being a performer. I think the thing that is great about you is this thing that you created that's your own, that people weren't kind of doing before. I mean, that persona and your way of writing and describing yourself.
I wouldn't call it persona, actually. It's just me turned on.
Right. Which is hard to do. It's hard to learn that.
I just think Yes, no, it is weird. Someone was saying exactly the same thing just like a few hours ago. I was just watching it on telly, so I can't remember who it is now.
That was me. That was me, yeah.
It was absolutely you. But it is that. There is that. You've got to think, your ego's got to be cranked. David Niven said this. You have to have an ego as big as a planet to perform, otherwise it just doesn't work. You can't go and say, maybe you might like this, you might find this. You've got to go, this is interesting. And even if it's not interesting, actually just someone who's claiming it's interesting is quite interesting. And kind of watchable, because they seem to think they're good.
Right.
It's like someone, some people are really good at chatting people up, whichever sex it is, and you just think, no one's really going to go, oh, they're chatting everyone up. Oh, right. So they've obviously got it's confidence in the end.
Yeah.
Confidence plus an attitude, an opinion on life, and then you put that together.
Well, I think the audience wants to know that they're in good hands. When you go to an amateur night and somebody's like, I don't know if this is funny, the audience...
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't want a pilot to say, I think I can fly this. I've been practicing a lot and I feel pretty good about it. Some of my friends think I'm a pilot. I don't know.
I am a pilot, and I learned to fly because I had a fear of flying, and I found they have the voice.
Right.
And you hear it in the plane. This is the pilot here. We're going to be flying in a plane. That is the voice, and I've used the voice. It's almost like Star Wars. When he has the voice.
They traced that voice. It's Chuck Yeager, the pilot from the '60s. He was the first guy to break the wall of sound there. And it's his voice that all those guys back then went, he's so cool, I'm going to start talking like him. So they all kind of adapted that voice.
It could well be that, because Chuck Yeager is brilliant, and was brilliant, and he's still alive, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
Yeah, he's a brilliant guy. The right stuff is kind of, I can recite the right stuff, basically. But I learned to fly, and I have used the voice when I was flying, because when you're flying, you have to get in, and when as you're flying along, you call up different air traffic controls to say, I'm coming through your airspace. And you have to say this message, which is, good afternoon, Southampton Control, this is Golf Echo Charlie Bravo Foxtrot, I am a PA-28, now inbound to so-and-so, outbound from so-and-so, and at 2,000 feet somewhere. You have to see this whole list. And I did this, and I'd done a bit of flying. I'd done about a week's worth of flying, and I was coming back into England, and I said this to Southampton Control, and you're supposed to say where you are. And I was reeling it off, this Golf Echo, I was reeling it off about 2,000 feet, and I thought, I don't know where I am. I haven't checked on the map. So I said, 2,000 feet, somewhere over England. And having used the voice, he came back and said, good afternoon, Golf Echo Charlie, Squawk 647. He didn't get it. The voice works. It's that calmness. And Neil Armstrong was maybe the epitome of this. I mean, Chuck Yeager, Neil Armstrong famously in one of the Mercury missions, the gimbals went out and it started flipping. The thing was flipping, which would make you throw up, and then you could lose consciousness, and then you're just dead floating in space. And he just kept going, and you have to have that pulse of 0, 1 beat per minute to... Something's going wrong with it, things going like this. And you go, I can't quite control. I'm getting the hang of it. It's that kind of thing. But yes, the confidence, confidence in everything, in business, in life, in politics. Yeah. Obama's confidence in the speeches where he was doing them, all the way up into the election. It is a thing that we do get attracted to.
And that is a big difference, because like with a pilot, wings on fire, they just let them know. And I think to be a good comic, you have to get to that point where, all right, this whole act is going sideways. Isn't this kind of funny? Even just it's to me, what I mean? Yes. Like, this is going to make a funny story later. I'm going to put these people through hell for a while, and that kind of builds you up a little bit.
So what you mean, telling the audience if you are going wrong, informing them that I know this is going wrong. Yeah, I do feel you can. I found this technique that you can get out of fuck up, because that's what life is really about, is how to get out of fuck up. In a car when you're driving along and someone comes out and they're going to hit you, and you instantly spin the wheel and boom, you're out, and you miss the dog and you're still going, and that's how you do it. And then stand up, it's when you go and you say chicken farming, chickens, they're no good at farming, they just can't pay the bills and stuff. But if you did that and there's silence, you go, you just hate me talking about chicken. You are chicken. You are all chicken farmers. You're all chickens. Some of you chickens, some of you farmers. It's a thing. I don't know. And then I do this hand thing, which I found, and I write endlessly on my head. Don't talk about chicken farming, specifically up in high-rise buildings, and and I can get out of it. So you get laughs on the way out. If you can't get them on the way in, get them on the way out and say, now, spoons. What
you've found a way to join them in their discomfort.
Yes,
Isn't this awful? What's happening? We could share in this awful feeling.
And once you get behind their eyes and you're inside their brains going, I know that I'm not doing this well. And the audience is going, yeah, you're not doing it well. But you've admitted it, so everyone's calm again. And you just calm them back down, and then they go, oh, this person's safe.
Right.
And they want to feel safe with you.
Well, I think, too, one of the things that you've done that is braver than people know as far as the international stuff is that you have to rebuild in every market. And I think once people get known as, I'm a star in this area, the last thing they want to do is go to a new place where people aren't showing up for autographs up front and all.
And also they could well have families. That comedians tend to cut through in their 30s.
Right.
Bands cut through in their 20s before they have families. So by the time they're 30s, they're hopefully making cash. They can bring families with them or whatever. But you have to... it gets really tricky with families how you do it. Some people just don't want to leave their family in the UK and travel all the way around the US trying to get the US.
Right.
But I've just decided to keep on going. I get kids at 50, in my 50s. This is my planning. But I'm doing gigs in French. I'm going to do Paris, 12 weeks in Paris in French. And if you do gigs in the second language, then the gigs in the first language must be easier. So this is my logic. Not only do I hopefully get hold of Paris at the end of 12 weeks, or make a dent into Paris, but I will be fluent in the language, and gigs in English have just got to be easier, because you can do them in French, and then German after that, and then Russian. But I want to encourage other people to do that. But quite a lot of Spanish speakers do it in English, or German speakers are doing it, and Dutch speakers are doing it in London at the moment. So no one actually gives them many brownie points for doing it in English once they've...
Right, you expect it.
Yeah, but if you do it the other way, everyone goes, oh, this is amazing. or I insist that it should be seen as amazing.
Sure.
Surely it's amazing.
And if you say that with enough confidence, we'll believe you.
Yeah.
And
but I've also found that no one actually believes that I was doing it in French. That's why I had to film it years ago, because I would say I do gigs in French and people go, oh, okay.
Right.
And then they go, so is it hot in here? And they go, no, hang on, just react to that a little bit more. And they go, yeah, you have a little bit of French in you. No, the whole thing is in French. Tous les spectacles en français. Je peux faire mon spectacle à Paris en français. And they go, so what you doing? And you'd have to keep saying it over and over again. It's like saying, I eat glass for a hobby. Right, you eat glass, yeah.
Doing this stand-up wasn't what you set out to do. It was theater first for you.
Drama. I just wanted to be an actor. I saw someone make make an audience laugh, and I thought this is great. I want to do that. It was after my mum died. This is, if you see Believe, you can see this trajectory in there, and her love, my mother's love suddenly disappeared, and an audience affection seemed to be something that seemed like it. So I started going for that like crazy, but nothing really twigged up. And then in my teenage years, I discovered Python, and they wrote their own stuff.
Right.
So I thought, well, I'll just set my own stuff up. And I call it personal nepotism. And you know someone who can set a show up. Yeah, that's yourself. And I encourage everyone to do personal nepotism.
Sure.
In the end, it's what gets everything going.
It is a lot better than standing in line waiting for somebody else's approval. You can just grab your friends, put on a show, and off you go.
And stand-up is the ultimate of not needing anything, which is why, they're doing it in Greece, they're doing it in France now, and in Germany, in Austria, everywhere. Moscow, they must be doing it right now. In Japan, I believe they've got stand-up comedy, everywhere. China's going to have it.
When you're traveling around like that, do you ever go out and just jump on somebody's stage, just show up someplace? And
no, not really, because I found that my stuff, if you go into the theatres, you can do more fragile stuff. And in the clubs, you've got to be more punchy, and it's a different set. You can do stuff on a theatre where everyone's paying attention and half the audience are kind of into your stuff, and you could say, we could put that with that and juxtapose this, and you don't want someone to be saying, oh, come on, say something funny. No, hang on, I'm getting there, I'm building the scene. So you're doing more intricate stuff, and you need to have more guts and also to be able to concertina your set quickly, which I find tricky. So when I jump on, I do find it. I have done it in London, and say, okay, I'll go and do a bit now, but I find I have to speed up my set. and then what is 30 minutes suddenly comes down to 10 minutes, implying there's a lot of waffle in there. But I would like to be able to do that, but I definitely can't do it in a second language.
Well, the one thing about you doing it too in theaters is, you know, beyond just that they're drunks, but people aren't looking for their drinks. When you're in a comedy club, you just always see people constantly worried where their drinks are.
That's an American.
Oh, is that right?
That doesn't in the UK. We managed to, which is I think great from a performance point of view, kind of encourage, as like there's one club, there's the what they call the Jongleurs Club, which is French for juggling, which doesn't make any sense anyway. but they do the American style with someone coming around and your drinks and your food. Yeah. We hate that as comedians. I don't know whether you you've got used to it, but it's a horrible thing. The Comedy Store in London, the bar is at the back. Everyone has to get up and go out. They can get up and go out. So there's that of dealing with somebody. You can always say, that guy is my brother and he he's on a sponsored walk and whatever. But they're not doing that thing. And as you all know, they're paying the bills at the end of the thing. The last act on has got some people going around cashing up credit cards, which is a nightmare. I mean, you know, did Beethoven have that? The final bit of Ode to Joy is going down there.
No one can ever believe the price. They're always just staring at the checks and showing what is this?
And there's torches going on. Because I did a special show at the Comedy Store in LA, and they were doing that. They were sort of winding up their bills, and that's what they do. But I could get through it, but it's unusual. But in most comedy clubs in the UK, that will not happen. And I encourage people to, if they can get to play London, there are 70 to 80 comedy clubs there which do pay, and it is amazing. 70 to 80. It is Hamburg for what Hamburg was for the Beatles. London was for me, and is for anyone.
And it still has stayed that way. It's still stayed very strong.
It's due to different sensibilities. Your business sense in America is more keenly attuned, and you will say, "There's a room empty. Come on, let's make it into offices." Whereas the breweries all bought the pubs, and they were from taverns from years of old where people would stay when they were traveling around. They had these function rooms that people wanted to use for weddings, so they said, we'll leave the function room there, don't do anything with it. So they got these big old buildings that aren't used terribly well money-wise, but there's this function room, and stand-ups come up quite often, you know, amateurs come up and say, I'll take the room, we'll take the door, you take the bar, and they say, yeah, that's extra beer money, that seems no problem, no one's using it, and so that's why we've got so many clubs. A lot of them run just by individuals on one night only, but it's great training.
Yeah, it's perfect training, and we did actually have a lot more of those in the States, but you are right, if something doesn't make a profit within, you know, 1 quarter here, boom, let's turn it into something else. It's karaoke bar, you know.
So it's just a great thing to have. I didn't know that was there, but I keep going back and adding up the number of clubs. 70 to 80 is insane.
Yeah, it's amazing.
New York has about 15?
Yeah, and most of those aren't really that well known. We're probably down to only 2 or 3 really strong clubs in the city. And at one time we had just tons of them.
We have only about 2 or 3 that are sort of 5 nights a week, but a majority are 1 or 2 nights a week. But still, you can just hop around, and they pay you money. They do door splits, you know, and it's just great for comics coming up.
Well, that's a good. No matter all these things that you were doing, you were earning kind of a living for yourself when you were doing all your comedy, right? Early on, like even being a street performer?
Street performer was a bit hand to mouth.
Yeah. But you didn't have to go take a day job anywhere.
I did 5 weeks as a sort of waiter and barman and waiter, and then I met someone who said, oh, you want to be an actor? Oh, yeah, no one ever gets to be an actor. And I thought, oh, I can't. I had this instant gut reaction. I cannot be in a business. I cannot work with people who don't believe that it's possible, because I've got that from home, because I grew up in this little seaside town, and a certain, you know, people around me saying, you can't do this. You've studied accountancy. You have to do this. Don't do the creative. No one ever makes it. No one ever makes it. You can't be an actor. Some people do. What's on the telly? What's all that about? You know? But I also did this trick of flame-throwing your bridges, which I encourage people to do. If you have a way back into a proper job, you've got to not only, set fire to your bridges? I flame-throw your bridges. So I had this image that I torched my bridges back, so that I pulled out of my accountancy degree, so I didn't have a degree to fall back on. I realized that would have been a millstone around my neck, and it was, having chucked that in 1981, I sort of started making it in 1990, so it was about 9 years after I chucked that. before anything started coming through. And the street performing didn't get me. It taught me amazing stuff. It taught me confidence in the pit of your stomach,
right?
Which you take it into Madison Square Garden and those aircraft hangars that I encourage Americans to play as well. And I know that because it's about 8 comics in the UK are playing arenas, and I think comedians, we need to learn to play the arenas because it moves our whole game up. And people say it isn't very intimate. Well, I encourage this big intimacy of playing
the last special you did, you were in Wembley, right? And that's how many seats?
Yes, Wembley is 11,000.
11,000 seats.
And Madison Square Garden, when I played in January, was 14, and the O2 is about 15 in London, and so it's. But there's a German kid called Mario Barth, and if you YouTube Mario Barth, a German kid, he's played 70,000 in Berlin. At the Olympic Stadium.
I don't know why that sounds dangerous. 70,000 Germans showing up.
No, it's cool. I think it's very cool because it's the same one where Hitler tried to say, "Oh, we're Nazis." The same Olympics place, which was built before Hitler didn't build it. I think it was already there, but it was in that kind of that look thing, and where Jesse Owens was winning all the gold medals and pissing off Hitler, and you know, I did Valkyrie in Germany, and I was saying that I articulated this thing that Hitler kidnapped the country. He kidnapped the country, so that if you study it, there were some people who were very pro-Nazi, and there were some people who weren't sure, and there was so many, about 500 political parties, and he came in and said, "I'll make it all right because I'll make everyone illegal. I'm going to shoot all you people," and then people, if they did complain, they were shot or hung or thrown into camps. So everyone just stopped complaining. So he stole the country, and that's not what the German people were. If you look back through history, they fought in wars, but so did the French, so did the British, so did everyone, the Spanish. We all did this stuff. They weren't particularly the people who were going to do that Nazi stuff. So now the German people are back as the German people. They do the Love Parade, which unfortunately had these deaths recently. But the Love Parade was a beautiful thing. Unfortunately, they're going to stop doing it. But everyone was dancing. It was all rave music, and that was fun. And so, so this kid, he did 70,000, and he did a massive fireworks thing. If you go on YouTube, you'll see the fireworks display at the end, and it's beautiful, and he played to 70,000 people, and they laughed, and my German isn't good enough to follow his stuff, but I think it's, it's kind of like us, we say men, we do this, and women, we do that, and stuff, and life, and I think that's beautiful. And there's a French guy called Jean-Marie Bigard, he's played 52,000 in the Stade de France, so with the Americans and the British, we've got to catch up with these guys.
Yeah, and certainly you don't want to follow him. If he just played 72,000 people, you're like, I'm going to wait till the other night when you're not around. Because you don't want to go walking out. How are they? They okay? All right.
Yeah, I know.
It's going to be a little, I don't know, I might have burned them out. I don't know. I was really strong there. I think the thing, and it keeps coming up about this drivenness that you, and finding the belief first that you just feel like you need these challenges, where I think a lot of comics, the second we get comfortable. Normally, the second most comics get enough money to get coke and hookers, everything starts to spin out of control. You know, like they don't really have any long-term plans there.
Well, I said this to my dad. I said, at one point, I said, I just want, this is before I was, this is when I was still talking about, maybe getting a job or whatever. I was a teenager, and I said, I've worked it out. You've got to get a cushy job, and then I just cruise on in. I said this to Dad. He said, no, it's not like that. I said, isn't it? Because he'd worked at one company all his life. But I realize now, it took so long to get anywhere. Then I realized something about the taking so long was good. And then I realized I wanted to do drama as well, which I wanted to do in the first place. So I thought, I'm going to slow down the trajectory of my stand-up as it takes off and suppress the rocket attack and lower it down so that I wasn't doing any sketch shows or any sitcoms. I wasn't going to do that. I was just going to restrict it and try and do drama at the same time. And if you do the slow build, it's better. And then all these extra things you add on. If you're doing gigs in French or a different language or whatever it is, the running crazy things I did last year. It just adds to your breadth of the confidence. Learning to fly an aeroplane, it just widens it, and so. I don't know, it's more exciting this way. It's slower and less flashy. And people don't know what you've done and go, what are you doing? So, well, actually, I did these things. That's all right. And I'm a relentless self-publicist, as you can see. I keep mentioning other things. And I've eaten the car, and my legs can swap around. So you have to do this, because some people go, what have you done? I haven't got any time. And so I keep unloading what I've done.
Well, you're doing stuff with Mamet today. I mean, there's most actors that came up working drama to go to Broadway and do a David Mamet play would be intimidated. It's a tough thing to step into.
Well, it's I've been training myself. I got a separate dramatic agent in 1994. No, 1993. So that's, 17 years now I've been pushing up the drama line. One of my first gigs with Paul Greengrass, who did all the Bourne Identities, the last two of them, the Bourne films. He gave me my first role. Alan Rickman gave me a role as well. The role was given to him, and he said, "Let me do it." And so I did a Mamet play back in '94, and I've done a Marlowe play. I've played Lenny Bruce on stage. A Day in the Death of Joe Egg got a Tony nomination. Again, I'm self-publicizing again.
Yeah, you're great. I didn't even know it.
But I'm just saying, this is my track record. And The Riches, which is a drama, and Valkyrie, I basically do dramas, and then I do the stand-up. So the Mamet is at a place where I really feel I can get my teeth into that. There are some funny. It's a very heavy subject, but it's a fascinating subject as well. And it's talking about race and two black actors, two white actors, and such a mixed audience, which is beautiful.
Well, it's kind of interesting too, because even like the way he does drama, sometimes to me, something like that is funnier than a big silly comedy. Like I could watch Goodfellas and laugh really hard, but not necessarily the big summer blockbuster comedies are almost too silly.
Well, this is a drama, and it's got about 10 or 15 places where people laugh, and they really do laugh, and they really get thrown, and the gasps and the exclamations from the audience is quite amazing. So that's what I can do. I hopefully want to be able to move people or affect people dramatically, and then make them laugh and go, "Oh my God, I'm just losing myself," and then drag them back down to the drama of the piece. That's what I like. Little Miss Sunshine is a kind of the only kind of comedy that I would like to do, which is a quirky. I call them quirky dramas.
But do they call you for the Hollywood comedies? Do they say there's a big silly role you'd be great in?
They do, and I keep saying, I'm not doing them. And they say, "There's money." I said, "Well, okay, I don't. It's, agents do, but they've generally got I've got down to people now who I say, you do know that I'm not going to do the big broad ones, but I would do a Little Miss Sunshine. But other than that, I just want to do dramas and really and it's stretching yourself. And the more that you broaden yourself out, if you can make people. You just shut up an audience, get an audience to be really paying attention, and then get them laugh, and then get them to something. Why am I laughing at this? Like Joe Egg, I was doing this. I was trying to kill my daughter, and I was making them laugh as they realized I was trying to actually let my daughter die because she was mentally and physically disabled, and I was trying to stop her medicine and saying, "This is enough. I can't deal with this." And then they realized what I was trying to do, but they've been laughing all the time, and that's maybe the unique position that I should be doing.
Well, you take somebody like Robin Williams, who was a champion of yours when you first came over. He's done some really great roles, but also other times you see him taking roles that you think, he just must need an extra couple of mansions or something. I mean, it doesn't seem like he's totally into this part. And
I don't know. I do have in my back pocket the stand-up tours, that I will. And stand-up is hard. I think it's harder than filmmaking, I feel, because the intensity of those 2 hours on stage takes so much out of you. And then there's the traveling around. And if people have families and kids and stuff, it gets more tricky. And I'm still unencumbered in that particular area, but I've chosen that route. But I can, if I'm taking smaller films which don't pay so well, I still can go out and do touring and in these arenas. And I do like the arenas just because it's you can make it intimate. And Obama showed this in his speeches, because he was making those speeches to 100,000 people, and he brought people into him, as opposed to, you can think you're supposed to do, if you think of politics, if you've seen pictures of Teddy Roosevelt, and those early politicians were shouting, because there was no microphones. They're just shouting, and they're pointing, and they're trying to get their energy out there, which is all they could do. But now, with the screens and the really good sound, if you've got good screens and good sound people and experts who know what they're doing, you just play around like it's 100 seats.
You actually have to bring it down, because you would look insane with the big screens behind you. But it's interesting for you to bring up Obama and people like that, because I always thought that the best comics always like any kind of public speaking, that they studied not just other comics but the look of public speakers, where a comic will be like, Mussolini, he's on tonight, he's got it, you see him, he's picked him back up, It's interesting to see people move an audience no matter how they're doing it.
Yeah, it is. It is. I've seen it. You see, Hitler was apparently a very good speaker. He was. I say that always. He was saying, "Let's kill everyone, not you guys, but everyone else. Let's just kill them." You go, "Yeah, that just sounds not us, not us." As long as I'm with this, guys. I kept trying to do stuff on this. Guys at Nuremberg trying to go, you know, on those big rallies, trying to go to the loo. You know, say, just hold my gun. I'm into it. I just gotta go for a whiz. And then they come back. Oh God, which line was I? I can't see. It all looks the same. You Nazi, you Nazi. All Nazis. Yeah. They must have gone to the loo. You know, because it looks in the films, it just looks like they all stood in straight lines and no one ever peed and no one. I am from Westphalia, and I was, you know, and I need a pee now. And, you know, all that stuff did happen. And Hitler walking down there and go, oh God, I gotta go back and go for a pee. Did the Nazis not pee? Strange places we're getting to.
Well, we belong there, though. That's a good thing. You know, you're one of the few comedians I've ever seen use history as a place to draw your material from. And there's a lot of guys that I think brilliant, but I'm like, you know, we're 42 minutes in, you're still talking about your penis, you're still talking about how much you ate your ex-wife. There's a whole world out there.
Yeah, well, it suddenly hit me. Epiphany moment. I was just thinking, my God, I can do history. I love history. There's got a family genetic thing. My dad's really into it, and my brother was brilliant at doing it at school. At university, did it, and I just thought it's all lying there, and I'm interested in this, and I want to get into politics as well. So that history informs everything. So let's go in there and dig it up, because the humans, we repeat, we just keep doing the same thing over and over again. Right. And I came up with this theory, which is kind of a crazy theory, but it kind of works. History plus the change in society multiplied by the change in technology equals the future. And basically, so history meaning the repeats of what humans keep doing. They keep finding one guy who's managed to get stranglehold on a country, and blah, blah, blah. It used to be kings in the old days, or back in the Roman times, they were called dictators, and they had a different, well, actually they're called emperors, because dictator meant a different thing. And then there were dictators, but they get a strangle, and you can keep seeing this happen.
Right.
And then society changes, so like slavery cannot happen now. It only happens in illegal places when they're doing human trafficking, drug trafficking, and human trafficking, and stuff like that. So society has changed on. No one can say, hey, let's just enslave this half of the country. No one's going to do that in any of the developed or hopefully undeveloped countries. And then technology, internet's just made everything change as well. So if you can't, it's not a perfect science, but you can see the future. But history, talking about it in stand-up is great. It makes you seem intellectual as well, and you're not necessarily.
Well, it's also kind of a great uniter, because let's suppose you started to do something and use Bush or Obama as a reference point. Immediately, people's own prejudice would play into that, and they'd be like, "No, you had me until you went against my party." But if you could say, "Here's something stupid that was done in the past," let them get to the point.
Does that ring any bells? Yeah. And I tend not to do party politics as well. One, because I was thinking, I'm planning to go into it, and also it dates your DVDs. And it doesn't work.
Right.
Because if we talk, if you look now and then you talk about Hillary and Obama and that election and McCain, you're going, oh yeah, that was 2 years ago. Or you talk about Bush, but it's Bush Senior, and you're going, oh yeah, that was against Bill Clinton. Okay, and then it goes way back, and then you just lose. It just dates. Politics dates.
And cultural references are the same way. That sometimes somebody will be, this Mel Gibson scandal is in the papers now, but 2 years from now it'll mean nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, and it could be a totally different place.
Although those are always huge laughs to get.
Yeah, I just avoid them. I try and avoid those. I try and avoid specific things. I mean, any DVD I do, you will see me probably, if it's in San Francisco, I was talking about taxis and fog, but that was just because I was there. But I just try and take out in any gig any reference. I keep them universal so that I can still do it in Paris or in Iceland or in Australia or South Africa where I just played. And then if you're talking about Romans, cavemen, all the history stuff all works, to the socially progressive audiences. You can tap into all that and you can just play it anywhere. I just got really pissed off for bands going and saying, "Hey, Moscow, you want to understand this? Well, this one's called Freaky Deaky," you know. And they just do whatever they want with bands, and they just sing in English, and everyone's kind of learning English because it's cool to sing in that. And I just thought, we can't do that, so I'm trying to compete with the bands, basically. And if they are allowed to go around the world, then I'm going around the world.
Well, a part of your DVD, the doc on You Believe, is where it came up where some people in England in the government there were saying that you were reusing your own material. That was baffling to me as an American to see this.
Yeah, it was a program called Watchdog. It wasn't the government. It was a current affairs program on television, you know, like you could have had one here. It says, and it normally says, these people are selling you bad insurance, this person is a criminal, this vacuum cleaner doesn't work, or these cars are dodgy, or something like that. People had gone, my style of writing was, I never wrote, I still don't write anything down. I just ad-lib and ad-lib and ad-lib, and I mold things. So any show you see will have something that I've just thought of that night, next to something that's about 3 months old, next to something that's a week old, and I just keep adding these pieces and taking pieces and cutting them up, and like a piece of clay that I'm constantly remolding, and so I used to finish the end of a tour, and so when the new tour began, I would be doing what I was doing at the end of the old tour, but I'd have to give it a different name, because that's what, you know, you're supposed to have. I decided to name these tours, and people started naming tours. Bill Hicks was doing that very well. But people came along to the first gigs of the new tour. The theatre in Birmingham said all new show. It wasn't an all new show. It was exactly the same as the show at the end of the last one. And so they said, we've seen this before. I go, well, yeah, that's what I do. If you come at the end of this tour, it'll be a totally different show. But anyway, so they jumped on my head, and they complained to this national TV program. And it was really annoying, because people in the old days just used to do the same 1 hour forever. Forever.
Yeah.
And in rock and roll, they still can do. You know, the Stones do get up, as I say in the documentary, and the Stones, you know, it's great, and they're doing good performance, but they are doing songs that were written 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And no one says, I don't want to hear Satisfaction. That's been heard before. So, and I felt I was part of the group in the UK in the early 90s, so there's a few of us who started changing our material over at a much faster rate. And so I was classically hoisted by my own petard, whatever that means. I've even tried to look up petard. I think
it happened,
it's some sort of thing, yes.
You were hoisted.
I made some petard, and then I got hoisted by it. It's obviously some sort of lifting equipment. And having changed have been part of the group that was changing okay, we're going to do a new show every year or every 2 years, they were saying this one isn't new enough. And so now I've changed my system. I now do work in progress gigs endlessly, and then when I stop saying it's work in progress, then I can start saying, okay, this is a new show because the material is turned over. In fact, last time I did it at Union Square. I was in Union Square Theatre in New York for a month, and in that 1 month I managed to turn it. I'd need about a month and a half, 4 to 6 weeks.
When you walk into that, you have no material the first night?
I'll be doing the old show.
Yeah,
so it'll be under work in progress, so no one can really complain. And then I can muck around with stuff. But I found that I can only, using this style, I can only change material over if I'm doing 6 days, 12 days in a row, because I was doing I was in LA, and I was doing odd dates, 1 date here, 2 dates there, and I never get up enough speed to start changing the material. After I've done 6 days in the same place, you get so relaxed, you start saying, okay, let's talk about birds and helicopters and architecture, and then you start shoving stuff up, and it goes up exponentially. My ability to write goes up exponentially the longer I'm in a place.
How long do you have to be off stage before you kind of feel like so rusty it's tough to get back? I mean, do you let yourself get off stage for any given time?
No, I try and do gigs all the time now. I mean, I did one that before Believe. I'd been 3 years without doing a gig, and that was weird. That really was trying to remember riding a bike. I know how to do this because I've done so many gigs before, but it just feels a bit weird. It took me 2 weeks to get back into it. So now I just try and avoid that. And when was my last gig? I'm not sure. I've got some gigs in September coming up, but I try and I would do one here in New York. Maybe I should actually, or in London when I get back, just to keep match fit. I try and stay match fit at all time. That's my new idea.
How do you know when you're out? When you're on stage and you don't feel like yourself? What is kind of the difference there when you don't feel match fit?
Well, if I hadn't done enough, I wasn't a match fit. It would just feel uncomfortable. I'd just be. It just wouldn't. If you're doing it right, I think it's like. It's like floating on air or something.
Yeah.
You know, it's just going bum bum bum, and everything's hitting and everything's going right, and you can go it's just like you're in a room and there's no. Time has stopped, and you're actually watching yourself. But when you're not, if you're not ready for it, then you're thinking, oh, what's the next line? What do I talk about now? It just feels clunky.
Yeah, suddenly you're thinking. Literally, the thought process changes.
Yeah. And you get right inside your head as opposed to being out and just relaxed and cool. And sometimes I do that on actual gigs. You know, you be on tour, and one night you're on there and just saying, that was awful, I didn't like that. And then people go, no, that was a good gig. You go, was it good? Because I managed to fake that it was a good gig.
It always seems to me where the creativity is working the best is where the comic is almost as surprised as the audience. It's almost like it's coming from a different place.
Yeah.
And they're just there with it, you know?
Yeah.
It doesn't always happen, but when it does happen.
Yeah, that's all. The trick I try and do is I try and entertain myself first. So I'm sitting in the front row, and if I come up with the new stuff, I go, oh, that's nice. Oh yeah, let's do that. And then you're really energized by it, and the audience really does feed off that energy because they can sense it too, or they can all sense that you're making up stuff right in that moment. So yeah, that's what I live for. And then I've got a new piece of material, new idea to play with, and sometimes I try and, like on the recent tour on Strip, there's a piece where the Romans, I was saying that the Roman language is just insane. It's just got too many endings. And then I have a Roman messenger talking to a centurion that Hannibal's attacking, and they're trying to, they know as much Latin as we do. So they're going, Centuriatus. They can't get the endings. Both of them, and they use French and German and some Spanish and English and Latin, and then they make stuff up that sounds kind of like Latin to talk to each other. And that's nice because every night I could change it. I could do it similar. I like setting up pieces whereby each night I go into it, and it's different every night somewhat. Death Star Canteen was different every night, and sometimes I do it so much I got bored with it and I lost the joy of it. But the one that's been recorded has become the guy did the Lego animation too.
Right.
That's become this classic, and that's just Darth Vader in a motorway service station in England in 1982. When I was hitching up and down to Sheffield University after I'd dropped out of my degree, I was going down to London and hitching back up and getting off there, and that's what Darth Vader is actually. That's what I'm channeling when I do that.
I think it's great too. I mean, it's got to be odd for you that there's all these variations of it, but only one kind of becomes, and not necessarily even the best. It's
that is correct.
What happened at that time.
Yeah, I tried to, when I came into shows, I tried to be aware of, okay, I'm coming up to a recording, so we've got to try and get this material as good as I'd like it to be. So that's what I try and do. I try because I found that I can ad-lib stuff, and then I get a perfect version. Everyone goes, "Oh, it's beautiful." Then I keep ad-libbing, and I change it. I even lose how good it was, and I go, "It used to be better." Can you? And I made it too big and overweighty. Sometimes I have to slice it back, and then you edit it back, and it suddenly gets better again. I've been through two versions of things. That happened with the Death Star Canteen. I got it, and then lost it, and then got it back again. And then I recorded it, and I thought it wasn't terribly good when I recorded it, but now people say they like it, and I've listened back to it, and I do like it, actually.
Do you have certain people that you use for feedback, like when you're on the road like that, or?
Well, actually, everyone and anyone. I just say people tell me things if they like things or whatever, but there's no one specific person. I have tried to do that, and I will try and work with directors now, because I think I get to a place where something is right, and I will break it, and I really should actually stay on that and then record a perfect version of it, because it could be. Mine is beautiful, but it can get beautiful, but a bit loose. But it'd be great if it was beautiful and hitting every bell and whistle.
Right.
Just because it won't feel structured. It won't feel over-structured. It'll just feel that it just lands perfectly. A perfect.
So now the directors just show up at a certain point after you've already worked it on the road for a while, and then just shoot it. But you're saying maybe keep a director to work all the way through the tour with you? Or?
No. Well, Sarah Townsend shot Wembley, and she shot Believe as well, and she shot Madison Square Garden. So she comes from. I first met her, and she was directing Epicene, which I still can't even spell. So she comes from that literal world, and so comedy isn't her main thing. Her design is her main thing. So if it works with her, then I know that I've got a wider audience than the arch comedy people who will say, I get that, but most people don't get that. You know that. So we have quite a lot of references in there. So it's better to get I want it to land so that it works in many different ways. Without killing the central energy of it. So we've just talked about this. We haven't actually got into it, but it would be great if I film it halfway through a tour and say, and look back at it. Because when I'm doing it, you don't actually want to look back at your own show. You have to force me to go back and look at it. But if I could do that and go, that really isn't working, but that is good. I'm just going on too much there, and then sometimes you can blow the rhythm. You can put an extra joke in, which seems great, but it actually blows the rhythm.
Right. So. I think that would be surprising to people too, that it would be uncomfortable for you to go back and watch, because
it's not uncomfortable. It's just boring. It's just it's just like if you're on tour and you're doing it night after night, and they say, right, sit down in the day and watch the show that you're going to do later in the day. I'd rather sleep or watch Turner Classic Movies or something. You know, just watching your own stuff, because it's great when I do it. I do try and keep it molten. This idea of molten material, which you're saying. Try and keep stuff always moving. I never write it down, so it's never got specific wording, so that it always feels like I'm finding it. Not so that it all feels improvised, but so that it all has a feeling of newness to me, and so I'm discovering some part of it every night. Because you'll see people with sets, and they're knocking out their set, they're phoning in their set, and the audience is going, and they've lost the joy. And I've seen people, and then they get one new bit that they got in it, and then they light up like, oh yeah, what's happening with fish? Why are they taking over the world? And then they become on fire, and the audience goes, yeah, fish, kill them, why? And then they go back in. So anyway, then Mussolini, he's no good. Because obviously I'm 30s comedian.
And it's funny too, because obviously, I mean, even if it's new people who've never heard those routines, the feedback gets progressively worse and worse, and the comics like whatever, like, sometimes if you're tired of material, you'll hate the people who start to laugh, like laugh at that same shit like always,
You fool! My leg's going on. That's right. And the joy or the energy is controlled by the deliverer. It's really weird. And I've studied audiences maybe more than most people, because if you come through street, you learn about the energy of an audience. And it's interesting, because I wouldn't have thought that right here, how many people, we've got about 20 people here, and whether this would work, but it does work. It's all very concentrated, and people seem to be interested. And so, when I was doing street performing, and people would fall asleep, or babies would fall asleep, and I'd spin that around by going, this is the kind of audience member I want, someone who's paying attention, someone whose mind has been blown, and then they need to rest. Or you spin it around like that. So, and it's so hard doing street performing. Street performing is the hardest thing I've ever done, because the audience doesn't even want to watch you. They haven't even paid any money.
Somewhere.
Yeah, that's it.
Stop them.
You have to stop them while they're going to have a coffee, watch a film, go and have their legs swapped around, whatever it is, and you've got to say stop, and then they go, why? And I found. You have to try and build up an audience. You build up an audience and get an edge, and then you have to do physical situation comedy, basically. Yeah, you have to do stuff where it looks like you're going to die. That's the only thing. That's the only thing that'll keep them on a rainy day. There has to be a potential death. There's people on tall unicycles and juggling clubs. They could fall off them, die. I used to get out of handcuffs on a tall unicycle, so there was death and potential death involved.
Well, there you have it. Eddie Izzard, everybody, let him hear it. Well played.
Extended, in-depth conversation with the greatest minds in comedy. Unmasked with Ron Bennington.